I wonder how many of us have made promises just not to keep them. I wonder how many of us have made promises to someone who helped us, and we said we will come through for them, but once we got what we required from them, we felt less inclined to do what we said we would do. Now, I carried guilt like that for a while. Then eventually, life went on. Only later would I realize that the others lie that I told, the promise that I didn't keep, would impact someone's life. Even though my name is not recorded in scripture as such, many people might know me by my profession, as I was Pharaoh's chief cupbearer. It might not have been the most glamorous of jobs, but in a sense, I was a trusted individual, at least by Pharaoh. He trusted me enough that I had to test his food and his drink to make sure that he didn't get poisoned. Now, I want to tell you a story of how my forgetfulness would eventually, in a sense, actually save our whole nation. Now, through my life, I've learned one great truth, and that's that coincidences is normally the work of God. Now, I want to tell you about a prisoner that I met when I was locked up myself in the royal prison. Ironically, when I got there, the chief administrator was a young Hebrew lad, and I was sent there with the chief baker of Pharaoh. Now, how we got to prison doesn't really matter. Let's just say that Pharaoh was not very impressed with either the two of us. But one thing that you will learn in prison is you've got a lot of time on your hands. And eventually the curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know who this young Hebrew man was and how did he end up getting locked up in the royal prison, of all places. So I asked him, please tell me, how did you get here, who you are? And he would start off by saying his name is Joseph. He was in his 20s. He seemed like quite a decent lad, if you ask me. But the ordeal that he went through to get there astonished me. He told me he was a son. He had 10 brothers. But he was his father's favorite son, according to him. And apparently his brothers did not like that too much. And he knew he was father's favorite because his dad actually gave him a special coat made of merry colors. So there was a lot of enmity between him and his brothers. He was quite a dreamer, although I don't think he ever would have dreamt ending up in prison the way he did, unintended. But the one day he had two dreams, and he in fact told his family, interpreted his dreams, and he said, you know what, one day you guys will bow before me. And nobody liked it, not even his dad. And they said, this is absolute nonsense. You're the youngest one. Now, why will we bow before you? So the strife actually increased. One day his dad sent him out and said, go look at the well-being of your brothers. Couldn't find them in town, and he managed to find them in Lefeld. Went out, had a chat to them, and on that day, the brothers just basically had enough. And they decided they actually want to kill him. But luckily for him, his one brother, Reuben, came to his senses and said, guys, we can't shed the blood. We'll just put him in a pit. And that's where they left him. Joseph would tell me he actually always hoped that somewhere along the lines, the plans was that Reuben would come back to look for him, but he'll never know. In the time that Reuben was absent, they actually saw merchants coming past. And he was sitting there in the cistern, and he realized that his brothers actually want to sell him. The caravan of Midianite merchants came past, and Judah said, listen, let's sell him. 20 silver pieces, and off he went. And that's how he ended up actually coming all the way to Egypt. Once in Egypt, Pharaoh's captain of the guard, Potiphar, employed him. He worked in his house. He told me Potiphar's house was actually quite blessed when he was there, and he worked himself up. He started as personal attendant to the chief of the household, and then eventually of the manager of the whole estate. But by this, something happened, and it was that the boss's wife took a liking to him, but not a good liking. So much so, she wanted more from the young lad. She got him into a room, and he decided, listen, that's it, I cannot do this. Decided to run. Literally, he ran, left his garment behind. And I asked him, but why? Why would you do that? And he said, no, the God that he serves, he can't do it to God. He can't sin against God because God's got a plan for him, apart from the fact that he respected the boss that he worked for. So much so, Potiphar's wife was actually humiliated by this, made up a story and said he tried to rape her. And that's how he ended up in prison. Now, it's actually ironic if I listened to him where he said God's still got a plan. It was quite confusing. I know. Seemed weird to me. Because can we really say God is working in our lives when things fall apart, when our plans don't work out, when we end up in prison? Is God really busy there? But we'll get back to that a bit later on. One night, ironically, I had a dream, also quite a strange dream. I dreamt of 3 grapevines. And the next moment, I was squishing the grapes into Pharaoh's cup. The baker also had a dream. He had a dream where he had 3 bread baskets and the birds were eating from the top one. The following morning, both of us seemed quite confused and kind of sad, and Joseph picked up on it. And we said, listen, you guys, what's going on? And we explained our dreams, and we said, listen, we don't know what this means. And he interpreted it for us. For mine, he said, listen, in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to appoint you back into your place. You're going to be head cupbearer again. And I thought, fantastic. And Joseph said, but listen, for the good news I've given you, please plead my case by Pharaoh. Tell him how I ended up in Egypt, being sold as a slave, how I ended up in prison, being accused of rape that I didn't do. And I said, by all means. I mean, the message I got was fantastic. Unfortunately for the baker, the news was not so good. I told the baker, within 3 days, Pharaoh's going to hang you, and the birds will eat your corpse. On Pharaoh's birthday, the dreams actually came to fruition. We were released, I got my job back, and the baker was hanged. Unfortunately, I forgot about Joseph. My things got back to normal. Now, I've proven myself to be a liar. I'm not proud of the fact, but I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room that's ever told a lie. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's ever made a promise not to keep it. But I got good advice in my life once where someone said, if you are in a good mood or celebrating, do not make promises. Because once the nuances wear off, you might not want to be the one keeping the promise. And I think that's more or less what happened to me. The novelty wore off. I went back to work, completely forgot about Joseph. 2 years would pass, and 2 years later, Pharaoh himself would have 2 dreams that baffled him. He wanted them interpreted because he was quite worried about them. Got all the guys in Egypt, the clever guys, and he said, please, tell me what these dreams meant. None of them could actually interpret the dreams. He dreamed that he had 7 fat cows that emerged from the Nile, that grazed, and then 7 skinny cows actually ate them. And then he had a dream where he had 7 heads of healthy grain, and then it was swallowed by 7 blighted heads. Didn't make sense. And I said, listen here, I know someone that can interpret dreams. He's quite good at what he does. So much so, it ended up, he summoned Joseph straight away. The nice thing is, he shaved him, he bathed him, gave him proper clothes before standing in front of him. And the nice thing that I can commend Joseph for, he didn't want the honor of himself. He told Pharaoh, listen, I'm going to do this, but it's going to be by the grace of God. It's going to be God that's going to answer your dreams. But the fact that you had 2 dreams tells me it is from God. We have to take this serious. What's going to happen is, you're going to have 7 good years, but then you're going to have 7 terrible years with famine. We have to make provision for those terrible years now. Pharaoh was so impressed with him that he said, listen, I'm going to employ you. I'm going to give you this job. I'm going to give you the position of Prime Minister to actually do this, to handle this whole thing for me. And I stood there thinking to myself, can you imagine this? Just not long ago, he was wearing prison clothes. The next side, he was wearing a signet ring of Pharaoh, gold chains, fine robes, and he actually got his own personal chariot as the Prime Minister. Everything went well. Ironically, the dreams did happen. Famine hit, we had enough stored up. So much so, Joseph could sell the grain back to people from other countries, could feed our own people. Plan worked out fantastically well. He settled in as an Egyptian. He married, got 2 kids of his own. Now, the one day, Joseph got 10 unexpected visitors. 10 Hebrew men, because the famine actually hit Canaan as well. They didn't recognize him, but he recognized them as his brothers. He wanted to test them. He didn't want them to know who he was. Sold the grain to them, chatted to them, spoke to them, and he wanted to see whether they might have changed over the 20 years that they haven't seen him. He actually sold them the grain, put their money back. But while they were talking, he realized that they've got another brother that he didn't know about. And he wanted to meet this brother in person. They didn't know that he could understand their language because he used an interpreter. By this, he told them one of the brothers must stay behind as surety. He wants to meet the other one as well. They went home, and I presume it worked because the next moment the brother was back. His name was Benjamin, the youngest of them all, and Joseph seemed to realize that this was blood. This was not a half-brother, this was an actual brother. He seemed to be quite emotional about this, but being the nice person he was, he arranged a feast for them. And he said, come, let's all eat together. Now, they were a bit perplexed, I could gather, by their attitude, by the silver that was in the bags. But he released Simeon and he said, enjoy the feast with your brothers. Let's have a chat, let's talk. And obviously, he seemed a bit tearful. I couldn't really explain that, but he went and he sat on the opposite side of the Hebrews. And that's as it should be, because we as Egyptians, we are better than the Hebrews, if I can say it like that. but he had a feast with them. And he returned his brother silver again, and he did a kind of a test, a funny thing, where he put a silver cup in the youngest one's bag. I didn't understand it at the time. I had him searched, and he said, "You were stealing from me, why?" And he kept him behind, and he said, "Listen here, this young one's going to be my slave." Ironically, all the brothers emphatically said, "Please don't, we will be your slaves, please release him." And Joseph was kind of perplexed, and especially Judah, the one that sold him. He was the one that said, "Please, I'll be your slave. Please just send him back home." And by this, I could see Joseph's demeanor change, because I think he realized these guys have changed. They are not the same guys that sold him into slavery all those years back. They had a change of heart. They were different people. And then he revealed something to themselves, because he chased all of us out of the room. Said something, I can only speculate, but it seemed good because there was joyous celebration. I could hear that. They were actually happy, cheerful joy, you know. And the next moment, I just heard him say, "Listen, you guys, invite your whole family over to Egypt." So I suppose the meeting went well. As far as I could gather, he revealed who he was, and he told him, "Listen, he doesn't have any grudges against them because it was all part of God's plan. Everything was part of God's plan." They went back. They fetched his father, who came to live in Egypt. In fact, he gave him a very nice piece of land in Goshen, and so much so when Pharaoh realized they were there, he welcomed them, brought them in. And then I realized God's whole plan came to fruition. Even though it didn't make sense, even though it didn't look like God was still working, he was. God never forgot Joseph. When he was in the pit, he didn't forget him. When he was a slave, he didn't forget him. When he was in prison, he didn't forget him, because God was always with him. Even if we don't see it, God is still working. It's ironic if I look back now, even my mistake eventually worked out exactly as God had planned it. And I realized even if we forget, God doesn't. So if you feel bad today, if you feel falsely accused, if you perhaps feel forgotten, I knew a prisoner once who waited many, many years before he saw God's ultimate plan play out. Now, from my side, a reflection on this assignment, it was fantastic. I enjoyed this a lot. Telling the story is a bit out of my comfort zone. My wife got to the point where she said, "Listen, she thinks I must turn this into a sermon." I'm planning on doing that. I've actually used a part of this in a sermon quite recently. I do deal with youth at one of the schools here in the area. I've told the story to them. They thoroughly enjoyed it. The questions I got was a bit different from the different groups, the youth group at church to the youth group at the school, to my kids. Obviously, my kids wanted to know who was the favorite, in our household. Missing the point a bit, I suppose, but they were the first ones. So I was still practicing. Second one in our youth group, it was actually quite nice. The encouragement I got from them was good. The feedback was good. At the school, the feedback was also fantastic. Got different types of questions, but overall, this whole assignment has been one of my favorite ones because it taught me so much about how God works, even if we don't feel it. And Joseph's life is an example to the rest of us. Keep your faith. Don't lose your faith. God is always in control. Doesn't matter what happens. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Sad to think this is probably going to be the last one I get an assignment like this. But yeah, enjoyed it. And I think Joseph is an example to all of us. And it's good to know that God is always working in the background. Thank you and enjoy your day.